at the beginning of what you were called to do?
Well, that's kind of, the question was how supportive was my Jesuit community? Supportive enough, I guess, but those things are hard at first, People would say things, when are you going to stop doing your thing and start doing our thing, I thought, wow, I don't know. For me, it was always a call within a call within a call within a call, and those things happen. I wanted to be a Jesuit. I was educated by the Jesuits. They, for me, were kind of a combo burger of high hilarity and radical prophetic stance. So this is during the Vietnam War, so I loved that. I loved the fact that they were the funniest human beings I'd ever met in my life, which was always an indicator how joyful. They were absolutely, utterly joyful. And then they were always throwing us in vans, and we were going to go and pick it in front of this place or that place. I loved that stuff too. So it was a combo burger of those two. That's what made me want to become a Jesuit. And then you kind of try to figure out, well, priesthood, you're kind of a Jesuit first. That's sort of how Jesuits think. And then you'd go to priesthood, okay. And then I went and learned Spanish. And I said, yeah, I really want to, use this. And then I was converted by the poor in Bolivia, and I said, I just want to cast my lot with the poor. So it's a vocation within a vocation within a vocation. Then I go to Dolores Mission, and we did a lot of things in the early days, not gang stuff. It was mainly working with the undocumented, and we declared Dolores Mission a sanctuary, not just for Central American refugees, but to include anybody who was had their families divided because of immigration policy. And 28 years ago, I guess, we've had thousands and thousands of homeless men sleep in the church. In the old days, we had women up in the parts of the convent. So, and then I started to do this gang thing, because your choices, you're starting to bury kids, and they're shooting morning, noon, and night. So you can, just sort of dedicate yourself to Mass on Sunday and bury your head in the sand, or roll up your sleeves. So then I started to roll up my sleeves. And then I found, you discover this, you don't find vocations, they find you, and this one found me. So that was hard at first, and then things change overnight, suddenly they're okay with it, But there was a woman who wrote a book called G-Dog and the Homeboys, where she kind of went into great detail about my own bumping of heads with my superiors and stuff. Ancient history. Yes?
So I teach in a prison here, just south of here in Carson City, and I use your book, and and especially the chapter on kinship. And I just wanted to say how incredibly much it means to the men, and I think they would, if they could be here, they would be here. But I brought a couple of things that they wrote about kinship, so I was going to give those to you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And
invite me there. I'll come and speak.
Really?
Sure.
Yeah. So I have a couple. I have one question I could ask, and another question I really want to ask. The question I could
Go ahead,
ask
both.
The question I could ask.
We got 25 minutes.
One of the men said, kinship. I feel that with my family, but in here, I don't trust anybody. I can't trust anybody. And so that's the first question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say? The question which is very selfish in a way, is, I saw on Thursdays I go down there, and it's invariably the high point of my week. It just invariably. And I keep saying to myself, I wish that was on 3 days or 4 days of my week instead of a half a day.
Yeah.
And so that's the second question. How is
Add
that
more
made
days.
bigger?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like these things are hard to fight, because once you have a taste of what that experience is, and it is, again, as I think I mentioned last workshop about, the University of the Poor. John Vanier always talks about that, and you study sort of at the feet of the poor, and you learn, and you receive people, and then it's never about. Then there's the power in loving. It's not about, oh, I don't care if anybody likes me. I just want to be loving, and then you're totally free. You're liberated forever for the rest of your life. And nothing is forever, but you have to kind of, or as a homie said at Folsom Prison when I was a chaplain there, I said, how do you do this? Because I met so many guys who had decided not to be locked up. And I know so many who had discovered this freedom long before they were ever released from prison. And how do you do this? And one guy says, I just stay prayed up all day long. And that's just enormously wise. It's a way of keeping himself centered and anchored. The trust thing is a hard thing to do. We do battle with that all the time. Holiness is irresistible. And there's something utterly holy in people in a community deciding to be tender with each other. It's the Japanese cultural sense of amai, which is the feeling of being cherished. Once people feel cherished, trust is not that far behind. You just need enough people doing it, There's a kid, Enrique, who, in the younger variety, and the younger guys are hard. You have to really hold them, and you have to be very attentive, and they're stuck in a lot of mindsets that the older guys, lifers who've done prison time and come to Homeboy, they've kind of come to terms with a lot of things. They may still have to, everybody needs to do the work. I mean, the work ends in the graveyard. But the younger guys are hard because they're really 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And they're there. I used to have the guy who ran the silk screen. He'd call me all the time. Hey, that guy Louis you sent me? I said, yeah. Well, he doesn't want to be here. I said, where is he right now? Here. I go, trust me, if he didn't want to be there, he would not actually be there. He may be difficult and his behavior may be alarming, but he's there. So Enrique is like that. He's 19 years old and he's just a knucklehead. But once he's stepped into my office, and you're always waiting, the homies will say things and say extraordinarily tender, sweet things, and then I wait. And I need $100 for my rent. I'm the priest they mistook for an ATM machine. And so, but he didn't have any kind of thing like that. He just says, I just want to tell you something. He stuck his head in. He said, if it weren't for Homeboy Industries, I'd be dead. Then he felt he needed to clarify. He said, not locked up, dead. I said, okay. And he walked out. I have another Jesuit who works there, Mark Torres, who's a great man. And he's kind of our spiritual guru, and he's a therapist, a licensed therapist. And so he sees everybody, but he kind of floats around, and he runs our meditation class, And Enrique, the same kid, Mark was telling me, the guy kind of drives me crazy because he's always fooling around. He's on his cell phone and he's laughing. But Mark just goes in and he just hits the gong and they all meditate. And the whole world can be collapsing around Mark. He just doesn't give a shit. He's gonna his way through this thing. And because he feels like that's how you model this thing. But he knows, he can see through the corner of his eye that Enrique is one of the worst offenders, And then all of a sudden it changed. He suddenly would breathe in the spirit that delights in his being and breathe that spirit out into the world because the world could use it. And he got into it, and because Mark was persistent and never let him off the hook. So one day it was on a Friday, and this is always Monday when they have the meditation, so they pass each other in the hallway, and Enrique says to Mark, are we having meditation on Monday? And he said, yeah, at the same time. In fact, I could see you leading the group. And Enrique looked stricken, and he said, leaving the group? You know? And he was so accustomed to being asked to leave a group that he was completely unfamiliar with somebody asking him to lead the group, you know. And I would say, without a doubt, he probably didn't trust a single person in that place on day one. Now he probably trusts half of them. There's a homie there who's in my council, and he always says, progress is progress. Even if somebody leaves us after 5 months and tests dirty or something, he'll always say, progress is progress. Meaning, he had 5 months with us. Nobody cares about failure. What does that even mean? Progress is progress. And then they'll come back. In fact, he knows that better than anybody, this kid Fabian who said it. Because, you know, the guys who run the place now are guys I've had to let go. Back in the day, I'd say, no, come back when you're ready. We never fire people. We just say, come back when you're ready. You're just not ready. And then they do. And then they're ready. And then they lead others. Thank you for these gifts. I'm leaving my card here too. Anybody else?
How did the Dr. Phil show end?
It was okay. You know, again, he was a nice enough guy. But, you know, we allow the outsider view to drive the inside of how we see things. And then we just take it for granted. Gang members just want to belong. You know, cops will always say, a kid joins a gang because he wants excitement. I go, never. It's never happened once. Or they'll say, well, that's what they told us, you know. And I go, and you believe them? You know, I have a gazillion stories of that, you know, where somebody, this kid Grumpy, I took him to a class at UC Irvine, and he was kind of in the Q&A, and we were driving home, and there was a woman in the audience who had asked him, hey, you ran away from home at 9. Why'd you run away from home? He said, I didn't want to listen to my mom and dad. So we're driving home, and I said, do you remember what the question when the woman said, why'd you run away from home at 9? He said, yeah. Do you remember your answer? He said, yeah. I said, what was your answer? He said, because my mom would beat my ass. No. Actually, you didn't say that at all. You said, because I didn't want to listen to my mom and dad. Have you ever met your father? No. He could not believe that that was the answer he gave. Such a stranger to his own experience. This was a mother who used to put her cigarettes out on him and used to hold his head in the toilet and flush till he nearly drowned. One whole summer she kept him tethered, chained in the backyard. She would throw food at him. He never bathed. That was his bathroom. Neighbors saw it. They called no one. I would say running away from home at 9 was probably an appropriate thing to have done. But he was such a stranger to his own experience that he couldn't even retrieve it. But you put him on the Dr. Phil show, and Dr. Phil's going to say, why'd you join a gang? And he's going to say, join a gang and see the world, wine, women, and song. Of course. Because it's easier to say that than to say my mom put cigarettes out on me. And so at Homeboy, we want to create an environment where kids are at home with their wound, and that they can kind of take a look at it. And it's painful. That's one of the reasons why they self-medicate. So 5 months in, they start getting high, maybe even for the first time in their life. They never used to get high. Their high was gangbanging and the gang lifestyle. And now they're self-medicating because they're starting to excavate the wound, and they go, "My God, I can't believe that happened to me." You know, I was watching, what's the animal, ASPCA, and what's the woman's name who sings?
Sarah McLachlan.
Sarah McLachlan. And it's this plaintive song. And I was at home at lunchtime, and it was on, and it's, you know, behind bars, and it's trembling cats and one-eyed dogs and whatever it is, and it'll say on the screen, beaten and tortured, abandoned and left for dead, neglected, all these kinds of things. And I read every single one, and I thought, there is not a single word that has passed this screen right now. Every single word could be applied to every single individual who walks through our doors at Homeboy Industries. And not one word applied to this guy. Every single one. Torture, abandonment, neglect, beaten since birth, all this kind of stuff. So I went home, and my assistant then, I said, by the way, I Googled it. You know, that one song has raised $30 million for the ASPCA. That one song, commercial song thing. And I said, why does that have such an appeal? And my assistant said, because pets, animals are innocent. I said, yeah. And so is every single human being that ever has walked through the doors of Homeboy Industries. And we want to strike a high moral distance. You made your bed, you're going to sleep in it. And I've never had to carry what the folks at Homeboy Industries have had to carry. Never, ever, ever, nor will I ever have to carry it. I stand in awe, as I'm going to presume God and Jesus stands in awe. I got in trouble once for a columnist in the LA Times. I had told him, I said, if we were the crumbling Hollywood sign, which was the thing that was happening then, we'd be endowed, which is what exactly happened. I said, if we were a shelter for abandoned puppies, we would never have to raise money again, ever. But because we're a place that helps folks who are a whole lot more than the worst things they've ever done, we struggle. Yeah, you had a question?
I was thinking of so many parallels to like 12-step programs because of the acceptance of everybody where they're at, and always welcome back, and just the whole story of surrender and acceptance.
Very much so. I think, I think if there are three spiritualities, it would be Ignatian, Jean Vanier from the L'Arche communities, and recovery, 12 steps. We also, we have lots of NA groups, AA groups, substance abuse, relapse prevention. We have all that kind of stuff as well. But we also have Criminals and Gangs Anonymous, which was started at Mule Creek Prison by the holiest man I've ever met in my life, a man named Richard Mexico. And he kept feeling, being a gang member, he was on death row, and then they got rid of the death penalty, and he was returned to the main line and died of pancreatic cancer a few years ago. Had a compassionate release. By the time they got around to releasing him, he had one day with his family, and then he died. Holiest man I've ever met. Whenever I was anywhere near Sacramento, I would drive to Mule Creek Prison so I could just sit in on the CGA meetings. And he always felt like, he goes, NA is, no, AA, it's not our addiction for a gang member. And so he modified the 12 steps as you would, as people have in other kinds of circumstances. And so we have that, and that's very, it's about modifying kind of, in the gospel they talk about repent, and in the original language means move beyond the mind you have. And so that's part of what happens at Homeboy, it's, you move beyond the mind you have, and it's hard, especially for gang members, because those things are just ingrained. Notions of snitching and what does it mean to be a man, and courage, all those things. It's no easy task if you wrap your mind around the idea of having to re-identify who you are in the world. It's huge. I ran into a kid named Joey at Target, and I hadn't seen him, and he worked for us for a time. And he had his two sons hanging like marsupials on the cart, and so big abrazo in aisle 5, and how you doing, and just because I'm kind of like this, I always kind of try to investigate, do you go to the neighborhood, do you kick it with the homies, and so I asked basically that. He goes, oh, no, I never do that. I'm just dedicated to my wife and my 2 sons and my job. Well, I did get a call the other day, he says, from some youngster, and that's sometimes a generic term for just some new booty gang member. And I said, why'd he call? He goes, well, he was inviting me to a meeting. And occasionally gangs will have meetings, large meetings in a park or some huge venue that can accommodate everyone. You have to go. And I said, wow, what did you say to him? He said, I'm not going to your meeting. I'm a man. I work. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm not going to your meeting. I said, well, what did he say to you? He called me a punk, which is huge in gang parlance. I said, whoa, what did you say to him? I said, if I was a punk, I'd be going to your meeting. And as they say in game shows, good answer, Well, I'll say one last one. Because I had thought of this kid the other day, and I hadn't for a long time, and we called him Bandit, and he earned his name. He was just a knucklehead, and in the projects, and running up to cars and selling crack, and I used to hand him my card and say, hey, Bandit, give me a call. Very polite, but never did. Until one day he did. And he walked into my office. And in those days, we had some social enterprises, but we were mainly trying to find felony-friendly employers. So I sent him to our job developers. And as luck would have it, they were able to find something really fast. Kind of entry-level warehouse job, a first kind of job, and so he went there, and now, cut to some years later, he was, before too long, kind of the head guy, supervisor, and now he's running the show, and I hadn't heard from him in a long time, and so he calls me on a Friday afternoon, and kind of in a panic, he says, gee, you got to bless my daughter, and I thought, oh my God, is she in the hospital or something? And he says, no, on Sunday she's going to Humboldt College. Oh. Imagine, my oldest, my Jessica, she's going to college. But that's far. And she's never lived away from home. And so could you give her a blessing before she goes? And I said, gosh, I'd be honored. Why don't you come at 12:30, because I have baptisms at 1. And so sure enough, right at 12:30, they show up on time, Bandit and his wife, 3 kids, including tiny little Jessica, heading to college. And so we stand in front of the altar and we get in a circle. And I said, let's put Jessica in the middle, and everybody touch her, grab her. Grab her arm, put your hand on her shoulder, put your hand on her head. And so I said, well, bow your heads and close your eyes. And as the homies would say, I do a long-ass prayer. I go on and on. And somewhere in the middle of this thing, I noticed we've all become chillones. We're all, and we're all crying. I don't know why we're crying, except for the fact that Bandit and his wife do not know a single person who's ever gone to college except me. Certainly nobody in their families, And so, we wipe our tears and we are bagging on each other about how mushy we got. And so I look at Jessica, so what are you going to study at Humboldt College? And she was very quick, forensic psychology. I go, damn, forensic psychology. And Bandit says, yeah, she wants to study the criminal mind. And Jessica looks over at him and does one of these, you know. And he sees her and he kind of gets the joke. He goes, "Yep, I'm going to be her first subject." So we walk out to the car, and big abrazos, we say goodbye. Everybody gets in the car. Bandit hangs back, and I said, "Can I tell you something? I give you credit for the man you've chosen to become, for choosing to walk in your own footsteps. I'm proud of you." And tears fill up his eyes, and he says, "You know what? I'm proud of myself. All my life, people called me a lowlife, a bueno para nada, good for nothing. I guess I showed them." I said, "Yeah, I guess you did. And the soul feels its worth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining till you appeared. Till you appeared, and the soul felt its worth." That's how it's supposed to work. Jesus doesn't want a fan club. He wants followers. Thank you all very much. I have my card here if you want to get it and invite me to speak at your presence.
Now, where do you go?
Down to northern Nevada.
Okay.